Censorship is a medium through which influential people holding high decision-making positions within government bodies restrict artistic and communicative expression and do not make access to certain information easily available. However, this word has always been automatically associated with dictatorial regimes and religious institutions, which throughout history have been and still are capable of influencing and controlling people's thinking. It places an enormous obstacle in the front of individuals and their ability to develop critical thinking based on their own way of thinking and seeing things. It deprives them of the possibility of being able to live according to their own ideals and encourages a flattening of the mind from which easier manipulation ensues. At times, this censorship also involved the translator, who is not normally required to make his presence known in his translation activity, and was forced to set aside the code of ethics in order to continue exercising his profession, and to try to mediate between the dictatorship and the prototext, by limiting the context of the latter, so that access to particular works of foreign literature would not be precluded, as was the case, for example, with detective novels in the Italy of fascism, since these works contained forbidden themes or were unrelated to regime propaganda. Often, those who choose to use censorship justify it, when they do so, as something useful, a sort of necessary evil to ensure that imbalances are not created and the moral integrity of citizens is preserved, so as to protect the well-being of all. In reality, though, the real motives behind their aims are much more obscure than we imagine, for they are aware that those who accept censorship accept constructed truths, or rather illusions, and that almost always they recognize the authority of a single master. There is then an indirect and almost spontaneous renunciation of an important aspect of free will on the part of the citizen himself. All those who try instead to oppose the impositions are seen as crazy, and therefore not worth listening to, both by outsiders and by their closest acquaintances. They find even more hurdles in front of them, and in the worst cases their very lives depend on it. However, not all of them come to terms with blackmail and continue to fight for the search for truth and the defense of freedom of thought, breaking down, time after time, that wall of alienation and homologation that has consolidated with every lowering of the head. In this way, some artists earn their name as visionary idealistic people, unable, who knows why, to accept the reality in which they lived, reconstructing a reality of their own in which at least the imagination does not accept that limits or prohibitions be imposed on it to be and expand. Some had the courage to accept their bitter fate, paying the price for being too out of the box. Others compromised and, gritting their teeth, moved on in the hope of a better future, a future that today has become slightly more real, though not for everyone. If there is one thing which as a student of language mediation I learned from the very first lessons, it is that language is inextricably linked to a precise way of thinking, which corresponds to a very precise identity. Whenever one chooses to use censorship, one is also choosing to silence someone else's being. But with what authority can an individual decide which among his peers has more or less reason to be? The good as well as the evil of the world originates from us who are its inhabitants, and it would be fair if we always took full responsibility and consequences for our actions, guided by our choices. We cannot continue to hide the truth. No matter how strongly and stubbornly we oppose it, it will always find a way to reach us. We might as well face it head-on in all its brutality. Even today, in the different realities of the world, we experience this process of control, in some parts more evident and immediate, in others more latent and delayed. Thanks to the net, a medium that we could not benefit from in the past, we receive and have access almost instantaneously to new information and stimuli every day. And even then, this is not always a guaranteed good for everyone. But perhaps it is precisely this excess that distracts us from our priorities, leading us to develop other needs, to believe more easily everything that is passed off as true without trying to go beyond the surface. We are always in a hurry, and it seems as if we never have enough time, to the point that our level of attention and patience has also been greatly reduced over the years. All this will relegate us to the starting point, without giving us the chance to evolve and to increase our potential. Let us take our time, reflect, and keep desire for knowledge within us burning. never settling for simply the superfluous. Only then will we be able to fully understand and defend the precious value of freedom of thought and expression, which we will certainly never be able to do without as long as we exist.